And welcome back, guys. So, in the last lesson, we talked about what UVs are. In this lesson, as mentioned in the previous one, we're going to just be exploring some additional tools we can use to create our UVs for our 3D objects. You can follow along if you feel the need. You will find the scene file in the scenes folder labeled as section 6 exploring UV tools if you want to follow along. So I have loaded in that scene. You'll find the most basic of humanoid mesh that you can have for like a character or bipedal character. Now if I go to my UV section, and let's make this guy a tad bigger, where R is the 0 and 1. Now if I select this guy, you can see his UVs are not done at all. It's really broken. So now, like I said before, we can start off by doing a few things. I'm going to pop this UV menu off here. You can also find the UV projection tools that you find in this menu inside your UV toolkit under the Create rollout. I'm going to show you a few of these guys. So I'm going to go just have my cameras chilling at this angle. I can go cylindrical. So what it does is it projects all the way around as if it was a cylinder, and you can see my guy is stretching out as if he is a cylinder. Now you can now also play with these tools in the sense of have it project just like that, so it's looking at the mesh just through these two little faces. If I want a full 360-degree projection, I take this guy all the way around, and now you can see I've got my guy here. Looks like he's split in half, okay? But that is not an option for this guy. The cylindrical projection is useful when you actually have an object that's cylindrical in design. Planar, what this does is, depending on its settings, it just projects in a certain angle. So in this case, it's projecting from the x-axis through to the other side. So I can grab this red little gizmo down here. I can move the plane, and then if I want to rotate it, I can select the outermost one, and I can change the angle of projection. As you can see in my UV layout windows, I can project from the bottom or slightly from the top or even from left to right and all that good stuff. I'm just going to undo all of this. Then we have a spherical projection. Again, this works better for an object that is almost spherical. This works the same as the cylindrical, but just in a sphere shape. So as you can see, I can close it up just like with the cylindrical, or I can have like it do like 180 degree, and if I zoom out here, you can see where it's projecting and trying to figure out the UV layout. Then we have other projection methods up here. So I went through cylindrical, planar, and spherical. So I can go automatic projection. I'm going to go to its options, and then let's go down to 6, and then I insert. Then I'm just going to go and click project. As you know, it takes a snapshot of the model from 6 different angles, and this is what we get out of this, which is not a bad place to start off with. As you can see, there's the front side, it seems. This is the back side of the character. This is, what is this? Character left. There's character right. The outside of the leg, and here the inside of the legs, same with the arms and all that stuff. But again, this creates a lot more work for us than actually helping us. So if we go to best plane as the option, you go into your model and you select a polygon face, which you think is the best plane to do the projection from. So I'm going to select this guy and then that guy, and then press enter. And as you can see, it did a projection from the stomach area, and it did a very good job getting that angle. Or it did a really good job getting the squares nice and square from the ab section. Now the one I tend to use the most is camera-based selection. So it just generates a basically 2D version of a 3D model, and then I go in and do all the cuts and stuff. So if we go back to object mode and go undo, so we still land up with messy UVs. And last but not least, normal based. So now it's looking at the face normals and trying to get a angle at which to get the best result. Now face normals means, so the normal based UV projection tool, if you had to imagine a little line coming out of the face that's perfectly perpendicular to one of the polygon faces. That is the angle at which this normal based projection method tries to get the best UVs. And as you can see, it didn't do too bad a job. At the back it's nice, front is nice, we just got a bit of stretching here in the middle, but we're getting close. And it's almost looks like a camera based selection. So let's go undo, do, undo. So I'm gonna go do what I normally do and do a camera based. So camera based. If we go to the options, there are options in here, but I tend to not use them. It's not really necessary in this case. I'm going to go apply and close, and then it does a projection from where my camera is looking from. I'm going to close this window now because we've covered all the tools in there that you could possibly want. And then I'm going to go into here in our UV toolkit, and we're going to be exploring some of the tools we have here. So as I mentioned before, we've got all the projection methods we have in the little create rollout. So if we go to transform, this is ways where you can tell Maya how to move UV islands and flip them and rotate them and all that good stuff. I tend to do that manually because it's an easy process. Then we've got our cut and sew where we can create seams and then also basically stitch up seams if we see a seam doesn't work the way we thought it would. Then we've got our unfold, which is our unfolding tools. So unfold is the one we use a lot, and then we get optimize, and then we got optimize tool, which is a little paintbrush which you can paint over the island, UV islands, and then Maya will try its best to basically optimize it based on your strokes with the brush. Then I'm just going to close these two rollouts because I'm running out of screen space. Align and snap, so we can select a bunch of islands and have them align like either from screen left or center, screen right, screen top, center, and then of course a bottom. And then we can tell Maya which parts we would like to snap. Are we snapping the centers of the UV islands or the top left on corners of the UV islands? And then we can just basically have them snap to a certain like axis straight. Then we've got our arrange and layout. This one I tend to use after I did all the cutting and then have Maya figure out a proper layout or the most efficient layout that it thinks it should have for the topology. So we can use the arrange and layout right at the end to see how Maya would lay it out, and then because we can potentially do better than Maya, we will potentially and probably move some of the islands in a more usable and efficient way. So I'm going to start off here by basically cutting off all the limbs from the center of mass. So I'm going to cut off the legs, the arms, and basically the head, and then the feet, and then the hands as well. So let's go and do that. So I'm going to go to edge mode, select an edge, and double click there. I'm going to turn off this texture view because I don't need it this time. I'm going to find the best angle of approach to get this arm off. I can see it's this edge here that goes underneath the armpit, and then around. I need to get back up to this section here. So let's see what we can do. We can also use symmetry as an option. So if I hold down W, left click and turn on symmetry, you'll see we'll be able to cut at both ends at the same time. So I'm going to go back into our little cut option. I'm going to click cut. So we've added 2 seams for every arm. Let's go detach the head. So double click it so it selects that edge loop that goes around, cut it. And now for the Legos, we have an option here of either doing the seam line for the legs here or here where it's actually leg section. I'm going to use this top section here because that's where the leg's coming out of. And then I'm just going to go around and make sure it goes all the way around the legs. Then I'm going to go click cut to add a little seam line. And then last but not least, take the ankles, and that goes all the way around, and we can cut the feet off like so. And as you can see, we've got all our seam lines. And then last but not least, we also need our hanzos to come off. Cool. And cut. So now we've played around with like doing the manual cuts. If I go now, for example, and grab this guy and control D to duplicate it and move it across, you'll see they've got the same UVs because it's the same object. But let's try a tool from Maya, this automatic seam, and let's see what seam lines Maya would think would have been better. So I'm selecting the object, clicking auto seam. Maya does the math, and now we can look through here. See, it's added a seam line going through the top of the head here, and then basically through the fingers here. And let's see, for interest's sake, if we go to unfold, let's see how this would unfold. Oh, I don't want that. I want the UVs. I'm going to go to that island there, that island there. But I think it's also making use of the seams that I had in there. So let's go change this guy back up, and we're going to go create camera base. Boom. Then let's go try and have Maya do automatic seams, auto seam. And let's go and right click in here and grab all them UVs and then click unfold. And as you can see, it looks like a human rug, which is not a bad UV method of UV layout, but the thing is you need to optimize your usage of the 0 to 1 space. Say for example this guy had armor or props and all that kinds of stuff, you would need to still try and fit them in the same space, where now this entire guy is taking up so much real estate and has a lot of unused UV space. So yes, it did a good job of creating nice laid out UVs, but it's not optimally cut because it's not using the 0 to 1 space to the best of its capabilities. I'm going to go back, delete this guy, go back to this guy, and now I can go and let's go take off these legs. So UV, move these legs like so, grab the footsies, put them there, move the torso, move it there, and then we get the head and 2 arms, and of course last but not least the hands. Again guys, I'm not going to be using scale at any point until I'm done. I'm just using the rotate and move tool just to spread my UVs around. Now let's go see how we can cut up this head to get it flat. We tend to hide the seam lines on organic models, like places where we know it will potentially get covered up by like hair or a hat or whatever the case may be. So we can actually go here and up to there, and let's go add a seam line. We go cut, grab that head, and let's go click unfold, and now we can see how it looks. But I'm seeing there's a lot of pinching in here, so I could potentially go and select those edges and click cut. Then I can go UVs, double click, unfold to get a better result. So it's nice and laid out. That's the head done. I'm just going to move it over to a space that is out of my way. Now let's go do the arms. As you can see, the arms basically look like 2 big cylinders. So again, I'm going to look for the most optimal space to hide the seam. So from there to there, I'm going to do a cut, right click UV, select the UVs and unfold. And as you can see, there are my 2 armzos done and nicely unfolded. I can do the same with the legs. So the legs need to also, normally what we do is we hide the seam lines on the back or potentially in the center of the leg here, because that is also an ideal space, and very rarely would a camera be in this angle of a character. So putting the seam line for the legs in here is one of the better options. So I'm going to go cut, right click UVs, double click and unfold. Got my legs done. I'll just move them out of the space here. Now we've got our torso. Again, we would like to look for the most optimal place to hide a seam line. And we can go down the center of the back. I don't want to go into the center of the head because that has been done. And then this guy is going all the way around. I don't want it going all the way around. So I'm going to go and control click these edges just so that it doesn't go all the way around. Boom. And then there, and then I'm going to cut it down the spine area. Go to UV mode, it's easier to do it here. Click my UVs, unfold, and then we've got the torso, which is not bad. Actually a very clean UV layout. It looks like a face though. That's quite funny. Put that guy here. Now let's go look at the footsies. Let's make this space a little bit smaller. Okay, so what we can do with the footsies potentially is have the edge come down the back of the heel. There's a big giant N-gon, which is going to make our lives a lot harder than it needs to be. Maybe let's take it down the front of the foot. And then take it there, there, and there. And then I would need to open up the back as well. Let's go to cut, right click, UVs, and then go unfold. You can see here, they look pretty decent. But here you can see the problem now with N-gons and triangles and stuff. It doesn't optimize your UVs quite as well as having all nice square topology. Now let's go look at the hand. Press F to focus. I only want to look at this guy. The hand is one of the more complex things to UV. So you've got options of cutting off each individual finger and then doing basically a cylindrical unwrap if you want to go that way. Or you can find a seam line that can go all the way through the hand, like here and then here, like at the inside of the hand here, those lines, and then follow that line all the way to like the thumb. But I think I'm going to start at the thumb and work my way back the other way. So I would like the center of the thumb to wrap out. So I'm going to go edge mode, click that edge, double click, see how far it goes up until there, double click, goes up until there, there. Yeah, now I'm just going through the rigmarole of selecting these edges where I would like to do my cut, and it goes. Now I have an option of splitting the hand in two as well, so the top and bottom are on each a different island, but I would prefer to have a hand as an island. So here by the palm area, I am just gonna deselect these guys so they stay connected there. I'm gonna go cut, and now let's go and see what we get. I'm going to go click unfold, and when I look in here, you can see it looks very mangled, but that's pretty much how well you can get a hand. We have options like in here, for example, we can go in and select these edges that form like the tips of the fingers. Select those, boom, boom, and then that guy here, and we can go and cut, and then we go UV, double click, and we can go and unfold, fold, and that gives a little bit more tension relief on the fingertips because it's now nice and squarely laid out. And now say for example you don't like the way these fingertips worked out, so I can go to edge mode and select an edge, and then Maya will select the edge that it's partnered with. So for example those two are partnered with those two and those two, and then I can go sew tool or just sew, and then you'll see Maya will sew those guys back. And then of course, because you've changed the layout of the UVs, you would need to go and unfold again so it figures it out again. But again, I don't like the way those little fingertips work along there. You can also stitch things back together if you want to. So for example we had the hand split, so if I go and grab that edge and go and cut, and then I can go UV, select that island. Now that island is now the other half of the hand, but again that creates now two islands for a single thing. So I'm going to go back to edge mode, select those two, potentially three, and then we can go and use so as you can see, Maya just stretches out the faces to get them sewed together. Or you can go and stitch together A to B or B to A, and you'll see it will move the islands according to which one you selected first. So if I want to go B to A and do stitch together, you'll see it move the bigger one to the smaller one. But if I go A to B, it'll move the small one to the bigger island. So those are the big cutting options we have, and sewing things back together again. So I'm just going to go in here and get these hands stitched together again. I'm going to go A to B. Now see I've got overlapping UVs here. You should never ever have one UV face over the other. If we've got that coloration one over, it doesn't show red here, but that you don't do that. And then we're gonna go, we can use like the optimize tool for example, and now as you can see it's a big brush, and then you're holding down B, middle mouse click and dragging, I can change the brush size. And now as I paint, you'll see Maya trying to optimize the UV island, and there it's overlapping, so that's causing more problems than anything else. If I go press W, select all the UVs, we can just click optimize, and Maya will optimize, but again it's overlapping UVs and stuff. So that's why I like just doing the unfold, and Maya makes sure that there's no overlapping UVs and all that kinds of stuff. You can also try and straighten the UVs more. For example, the legs, if we go and get them facing straight up and down, we can tell it to straighten UVs in the U and the V direction. So boom, click that, and then they look perfectly square. Or you can go just in the V, and then you'll see the up and down lines are relatively straight. If I do just the U and straight, you'll see the left to right edges straighten out. But again, I just use that. You can also unfold along the U and the V, or U or the V. Then we also have the option of straightening shell. It tried to straighten this guy, but because I have symmetry on, it doesn't understand really what I'm trying to do. So I'm gonna go hold on W and just turn my symmetry off now. And now I should be able to select that one guy, straighten. Let's try and get it a little bit more straight so Maya understands what I'm trying to do. Yes, that, I guess Maya sees that as straight, but that's not straight. Anyway, now we've got all the body parts that we have, and now we can go in and start stacking them in the 0 to 1 space like a big jigsaw puzzle. Always remember, you cannot have one of your edges of the islands actually touching this border. That's just going to cause headache when you start painting textures and stuff. And also keep a, like, say a 10 pixel distance between objects so that when you color, for example, this leg, the color doesn't bleed over to the other leg. And then we can take one of our bigger parts, which is the chest, to move it down here. Let's go put it here. Then we got a footsie. Grab that footsie. See where I can go put these guys. This guy can go down here. I can also try and rotate it like so. Then we put that foot in there. Rotate that foot. Potentially fit in this between the two legs there. And then I've got the head and the arms. I can potentially go in here. Let's go and straighten this guy a little bit more, like so. But again, now I'm wasting UV space. So I'm going to keep it at an angle because I'm using more of the UV space that way. Now this little guy, I'm going to rotate, see if I can fit him like so. That guy could just have it below it, or in this case, next to it. Below it would actually use less space. Then I could take the head, see if the head would fit in here. The head in there. Try and get this guy a bit. As you can see, it's a big jigsaw puzzle now to stack our islands in the most efficient way to make use of this 0 to 1 plane. We are using the surface area a lot more optimally than when Maya tried to do its automatic seams. I'm gonna put this guy here, little weird little starfishies. Let's go and rotate this guy a bit, move it a bit closer. So that's how I would stack it. Now we've got more space in here for if he had, I don't know, a sword or like some clothes or whatever the case may be. The great thing is we can select all the UVs and then we can scale them all down so that the guy takes up the bottom corner, and then we can have his clothes up here, maybe his weapons up here, maybe some tools that he's carrying around in there. But because it's only this one guy, I would like to give as much real estate to this one guy as humanly possible, because the more real estate I give them, the higher the resolution of the texture will be on the surface of our 3D model. Now let's go and see how Maya would have laid this guy out. So I'm going to go auto, like the automatic layout option, and just click that. And that's how Maya would have laid them out. But there's always a few problems when it comes to this. As you can see, Maya has the UVs very close to the edge of our tile and also very close to one another. So if you paint on one, it'll potentially bleed over to the other. So this is not very optimally laid out. So I'm going to undo that. And this is the better option for laying out this guy. So now if I could go turn on my checker map and go in here, you can see my checker guy. It has the same size squares all over his body, which is pretty good. I'm not seeing any stretching happening. So those are most of the tools you're going to be using when you start creating UVs for your 3D objects. As I said in the previous lesson, guys, for every 3D model, you need to do a UV set or a UV layout for them. Else lighting potentially could not work properly. Your texturing will definitely not work properly. Also, it could potentially influence rigging later on in the pipeline and all that kinds of stuff. So UVs are pretty important when it comes to the pipeline. Now the great thing is, if I can also go and say, okay, cool, I've done this guy, but he's like a Euro character, so I would like to give him more real estate in the sense of more surface area in the 0 to 1 space. I am able to use multiple 0 to 1 spaces. So I'm going to go and scale this guy up. So the smaller the squares, the higher the resolution. Again, I'm just scaling these guys uniformly. I'm going to get the torso in here a bit better. Now the great thing is I can go in here, take this hand, put it in that square there. Have this guy rotate up a little bit. Press W to move. have them come in. I can go take this leg, shove it in there, take this leg, shove it in next to him. So what I'm now currently doing, I'm using multiple UV tiles and spreading my UV islands across the tiles, because now this one model will have potentially 3 texture maps to be able to contain all the texture information. So like I said before, the smaller the squares, the higher the resolution. So what I mean by that is when I zoom into my guy here, you can see how clean these squares are, and there I can see the letters are starting to pixelate. But if I zoom out about here, you can see they are still readable and doable, but here they pretty much crisp and clean. But if I go and undo everything I did here, so I'm just undoing, I don't have any more undos. Let's go just grab all of them, scale them flat or scale them uniformly, so I give them only like 1 UV tile to be on. You'll see, so by scaling them a bit smaller, I've got bigger cubes, but as you can see, these letters start pixelating a lot sooner. So I can only get this close to my character to not be able to see the pixelation. Even there would be the ideal spot for that. Whereas if they were very big, again, I'm not too concerned about the islands right now. I just want to show you guys. Now you can see the ones on there. I can get pretty close to this guy before I start seeing any pixelation. I can get about here and not see any pixelation on my map. The hands maybe because they're so small. Okay, so that's going to be up to you, as well as the production pipeline you work in. Some production pipelines want you to fit everything of a character on 1 UV tile if you're working in a game studio, because then the game only needs to load up, say, 1 JPEG onto the main character. But if you start using multiple tiles, the game would need to, for example, if you lay it out across 5 tiles, it would need to load up 5 different JPEGs for that one character. Now, if it's a AAA game for like the newest Xbox and the newest PlayStation, that is how they do that to get the more photorealistic thing. But if you do like a small indie game for mobile development, you will try and use as little UV tiles as humanly possible so that you can keep the file size smaller for your games, because the consoles download 30 gigs worth of information, for example, to bring in all the game information and all the texture maps and all that kinds of stuff, where an average relatively large game on mobile could potentially be just only like 1 gig or even 200 megs, and then that 200 megs needs to contain all the texture maps of all the objects in that game. So every, like, say this full character, if he had armor and everything on it, we would want to fit it in this one tile for optimization purposes. Now, with that said, this is how we would get our base mesh done, and that's all good. And the great thing is I can go and add resolution to this guy, and my UVs don't change because I'm just subdividing it. So again, I would do my UVs at the lowest possible resolution and then up res it, then you are fine. But you cannot go now and go, for example, grab a face. I'm going to go Control E to extrude and add extra topology. As soon as you add extra topology, you would need to change or edit your UVs. With that said, I'm going to end this lesson off here, and the next lesson we're going to be looking at a more complex organic model to play with. So catch you in the next lesson.